USA against Iran, against Venezuela, against Greenland, against the entire world. This man is trapped in a geopolitical deadlock. 3 of his limbs are entangled in foreign interventions, while the 4th is caught in the snare of his own domestic chaos. Even as he points fingers at overseas dictators, protests erupt and shots ring out on his own soil. The mainstream media keeps you in a bubble, carefully curating your feed and filtering out the inconvenient truths that don't fit the script. But in this video, we aren't just passive consumers of the news, we are dissecting it. We're going to look at Iran, Venezuela, and Greenland through a raw, unfiltered lens, stripping away the thick layers of U.S.-driven propaganda to see what's actually happening on the ground. I refuse to let biased narratives cloud the reality of what's truly unfolding. Instead, we are going to cross-examine the facts across a spectrum of independent sources, digging deep to unearth the truth buried beneath the static. Do any of you actually know the real story of what went down in Venezuela? It's time to find out. Some of you might have a vague idea of what's happening in Iran, but in this video I'm going to break it down in the simplest terms possible. Where is this country heading? What is their end game? And why has the entire world order been pushed to the brink by Trump's actions? From the moment he took office, Trump has effectively stripped the UN of its power, rendering it nearly obsolete. To understand this man's strategy, including his relentless attacks on NATO, we first need to travel to Venezuela. Let's break down the situation there in just 2 minutes. For those who don't know, Venezuela sits on some of the largest oil reserves on the planet. And what did Uncle Trump do? He essentially plucked a president from his home overnight and hauled him off to the U.S. I'm not joking. Let me say that again so it truly sinks in. Imagine this. U.S. Special Forces cross the border, head straight for the presidential palace, and seize the head of state in the dead of night. They didn't just depose him, they hauled him back to American soil. Why did this happen? To understand the how and why, you have to look at the ground beneath Venezuela's feet. This nation doesn't just have oil, it holds the largest proven crude oil reserves on the planet, alongside massive deposits of gold. But for the people of Venezuela, this immense wealth hasn't been a blessing. It has been a double-edged curse. The first edge of that curse is chronic political instability. When a country sits on that much black gold, the government becomes a target, both from within and from powerful forces abroad. Instead of fueling prosperity, the struggle to control these riches has left the country fractured and vulnerable. The president who was just apprehended had been operating as a textbook dictator. Despite losing the last election, he refused to relinquish power, choosing instead to rule with an iron fist. Because of this, his capture didn't just cause a stir, it brought a sense of relief to many Venezuelans. But to understand Venezuela's downfall, you have to understand the toxic relationship between oil and corruption. Venezuela possesses the largest oil reserves on Earth, but there's a catch. Their oil is extra heavy. It's thick, like molasses, and you can't just pump it out and sell it. You need cutting-edge technology and sophisticated machinery to extract and process it. This machinery requires constant, meticulous maintenance. However, as corruption bled the country dry and political stability vanished, the technical infrastructure was left to rot. Years of mismanagement have taken a devastating toll. Venezuela once produced over 3 million barrels of oil a day. Today, that number has plummeted to less than 1 million. The people of Venezuela were once among the wealthiest in the region, but corruption eroded their future. The advanced technology they once had has deteriorated into scrap metal, leaving them sitting on an ocean of wealth they no longer have the tools to reach. As inflation spiraled out of control, the people's savings simply evaporated. A nation that once held superpower-level potential found itself unable to even sell its own resources. By 2019, the United States stepped into the fray. Claiming that Venezuela was failing to uphold democratic standards, the U.S. imposed crushing sanctions, specifically targeting the country's oil exports. These sanctions were designed to be the final blow to an already crumbling economy. Since Venezuela lacked the functional machinery and infrastructure to refine its own heavy oil, it was completely dependent on foreign trade to survive. At this point, you're probably thinking, why didn't they just take out a loan? Why not borrow the money, rebuild the machinery, and get the economy back on track? It sounds like a simple fix, but in the world of high-stakes geopolitics, nothing is ever that easy. You have an ocean of oil waiting to be sold, a resource that should have guaranteed prosperity. Under normal circumstances, Venezuelan companies would have simply traded their way out of the crisis. But in 2019, the situation took a dark turn. The U.S. didn't just impose taxes, they blacklisted the companies entirely. The mandate was clear. No one can deal with them, no one can lend to them, and no country is allowed to buy a single drop of their oil. You might be asking, who gave the U.S. the right to dictate global trade like this? Well, that is how the game is played. And believe me, we've barely scratched the surface. While Venezuela was already suffocating from internal corruption, the Trump administration ramped up the pressure, repeatedly accusing the Venezuelan government of flooding the U.S. with illegal drugs. A case was built in a U.S. court targeting the Venezuelan president himself. Then, in a move that defied every norm of international sovereignty, Trump had him seized in the middle of the night and hauled to the United States. The message was chilling. It didn't matter that he wasn't an American citizen or that he was the leader of a foreign nation. He was told he would now face justice under U.S. law. Think about the sheer audacity of this move. It is as if the Indian military marched into Pakistan, seized their prime minister, and declared, "You've made a mistake, and now you'll be judged by Indian law." To hear such a thing feels almost surreal, even childish in its disregard for global norms. The justification given was just as bold, that the Venezuelan government was simply unfit to govern. Now, the U.S. has announced it will run the country for the time being. Trump hasn't even tried to hide the true motive, openly stating that the U.S. will take control of Venezuelan oil as reimbursement for damages. It is a brutally simple transaction. They wanted the oil. As Venezuela's economy collapsed, the U.S. launched an oil attack to secure the assets. Are we seriously witnessing a direct takeover of a sovereign nation in 2026? This wasn't a matter discussed at the UN. In fact, the U.S. bypassed every international check and balance. Every country within the UN is now watching a world where the old rules are being shredded in real time. The reality is that the UN simply lacks the teeth to stand up to the United States. Today, many Venezuelans are left wondering, is this intervention actually for our benefit? Will our rights and our wealth finally be returned to us? But the reality on the ground feels more like a takeover than a liberation. Venezuela is home to 28.5 million people, yet the ownership of their vast oil wealth has effectively been seized by Uncle Trump. He's made it clear the U.S. is moving in to run the country together with a hand-picked interim government. Before we move on, let's look at one final, telling detail about how this operation was justified and what it means for the future of global sovereignty. What is happening inside Iran right now? The country is currently being torn apart by a wave of massive protests. Disturbing reports suggest that since late 2025, more than 2,500 people have been killed in a brutal crackdown. The authorities have gone to extreme lengths to bury the truth, imposing a near-total internet blackout to plunge the nation into digital darkness. Under the rigid enforcement of the current regime, the streets have turned into a battlefield. While the government claims to be upholding Islamic law, the reality on the ground is one of widespread riots and state-sponsored violence. To put it bluntly, the man running Iran is operating as a textbook dictator, and he is willing to silence his own people by any means necessary. The Iranian government has plunged the entire nation into a total digital blackout. From fiber optic Wi-Fi to mobile networks, every connection has been severed. This isn't just a technical glitch. It is a calculated move to ensure the world remains blind to what is actually happening on the ground in Iran. Desperate to break through this wall of silence, Iranians reached out to Elon Musk with a direct plea: "We need your help." They asked him to position his Starlink satellites over the country and provide free internet access so they could show the world the reality of their struggle. In a move that has sent shockwaves through the geopolitical landscape, Musk and SpaceX actually did it. On January 13, 2026, they officially waived all subscription fees for Starlink in Iran. Now, thousands of smuggled terminals are becoming the only bridge between the Iranian people and the outside world. It is a high-stakes game of orbital cat and mouse as a private company effectively overrides the censorship of a sovereign state. At the urging of the Trump administration, Elon Musk has opened the digital gates, providing Iranians with free Starlink internet. But the Iranian government isn't just sitting by. They are deploying high-tech jammers and satellite-blocking technology to hunt down these signals and sever the connection once again. While they have successfully throttled much of the traffic, they haven't been able to kill it entirely. Glimpses of the chaos, raw, terrifying visuals of what is actually happening on the streets are still leaking out to the world. To understand why this is happening, you have to look at the foundation of the state. Iran is an Islamic republic where the legal code is built directly upon religious doctrine. Under this regime, the hijab isn't just a choice, it's a mandatory law, strictly enforced. Defying these standards isn't just seen as a civil offense, it's treated as a threat to the state itself, often leading to brutal crackdowns and, in many cases, lethal consequences for those who refuse to comply. If we talk about the military, the Iranian military is not very weak. They have quite good missiles. So the USA that is talking about invading Iran is not as easy to invade as it was to Venezuela. Next, Iran also has a lot of oil, and because of which you must feel that, brother, if they have oil, then they will also be rich. And the reality is not at all. Now you guys understand the situation. There is only one country inside the Middle East that has nuclear weapons, and his name is Israel. What does Iran do to counter Israel right now? No terror funds inside Israel, because of which Israel and Iran are not formed. And what Iran wants is to put on a very crazy power inside the Middle East. And second, Iran has been trying for quite some time to create its own nukes, and the U.S. does not want Iran to create its own nukes. When it comes to military power, Iran is a different beast entirely. Unlike Venezuela, Iran boasts a formidable arsenal of long-range missiles and advanced drone technology, making any talk of a U.S. invasion a far more dangerous and complicated prospect. On paper, Iran's vast oil reserves should make it one of the wealthiest nations on Earth, but the reality is the exact opposite. To understand why, you have to look at the shadow war defining the Middle East. Currently, Israel is the only nation in the region with nuclear weapons. To counter this, Iran channels its resources into an axis of resistance, funding a network of proxies to pressure Israel from all sides. This deep-seated rivalry has turned the region into a powder keg. Iran's ultimate goal is twofold: to establish itself as the undisputed dominant power in the Middle East and to finalize its own nuclear deterrent. The U.S. and Israel have made it clear they will go to any lengths to stop that from happening, leading to a high-stakes standoff where one wrong move could trigger a global catastrophe. We are standing at a crossroads, where the old rules of diplomacy have been replaced by raw power and calculated chaos. From the oil fields of Venezuela to the darkened streets of Tehran, the map of the world is being redrawn in real time. Whether it's through direct military intervention or orbital internet satellites, the message from the current U.S. administration is loud and clear. The borders of sovereign nations are no longer obstacles. As the world watches these giants collide, the question remains: who truly pays the price? Is it the leaders in their palaces or the millions of people caught in the crossfire of a new world order? The narrative is shifting every day, and the truth is often the first casualty. My goal is to keep digging through the noise and bringing the facts to your screen. Thank you for watching and for seeking the truth with me. Stay informed, stay skeptical, and I will see you in the next video. Goodbye.